Welcome to the NOCAP podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in one more time. I appreciate all the people who have been showing much love and support. First off, I want to give a shout out to all the people who are live with me right now on Instagram. If you are watching this show and you are not tuned in live on Instagram, you're listening to the pre-recorded podcast. I just want to give a shout out to you. I still thank you for being here. Reminder, you can check out my Instagram page at NOCAPYOG at NOCAPYOG. NOCAPYOG. That is where I do these podcasts live for my interactors to go and chat and listen. Today, we're going to be talking about cholesterol and the different ways that our cholesterol is spiked, particularly where I live, which is in the United States of America. And we are going to give you information on how to decrease your cholesterol levels. Okay, so once again, thank you guys for joining, and let's get into the information. Okay, so if you're live on Instagram here, you can see that I have this chart. Here that explains a little bit on what is actually causing your cholesterol levels to spike. Okay. And the first question, sorry about that. The first question that I have for all the people listening right now is, do you regularly check your cholesterol levels, or do you check your blood pressure? Okay. And the reason why I asked this question to the audience is because I feel like a lot of people, they only check their cholesterol or their blood pressure when they go to the doctor. But there is so much information. We live in a day and age where there's so much new technology to where you don't have to rely on just doctors to check these levels for yourself. Instead of buying those new pair of Jordans, or instead of buying those, that video game, or whatever you're planning to spend your money on, I think it's important that you look into buying something that invests in your health. So that way you won't be going to these hospitals or these doctors' offices and being shocked and being surprised. You can be at home. You can check these things on a regular basis. You can track your diet, and you can figure out what is causing your blood pressure to either increase or decrease, right? These are things that we can all do on our own, and it's going to really help us gain an understanding, because some people just go into these doctors' offices and they're probably just walking into them blind. You know what I mean? So let's talk a little bit about what actually raises your cholesterol levels. Okay. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I really want these podcasts to be not lengthy, because I know everyone has a busy life. And I want to give you this information quick, but I also want to give it to you accurately as well. To me, quality over quantity, right? So let's talk about a few things that spike up your cholesterol levels. If you're live, you can see what I have written down in the notes here. The first thing is red meat. Okay. For me, I follow a Torah diet. So when it comes to red meat, I don't eat animals that don't chew grass or they don't have a split hoof. So, for example, you will not see me eating pork. You will not see me basically eating any animal that does not fit that category. You will see me eating a little bit of beef. I'm a little skeptical on that. One animal that I really love to eat, one of my favorite red meat animals, okay, they might be in a tie, is bison and lamb. Okay, I love bison and I love lamb. Bison has a rich, gamey taste, but it also has a lot of protein and less fat than a cow. So if you're looking to switch up your red meat, try switching up from cow and instead trying some bison. Those are one of my favorites. Okay, now let's get into some of these unclean meats that you will not see me eat, but you will see a lot of people eat. Okay, and these particular meats do cause cholesterol levels to be high blood pressure, and even heart disease. Okay, all meat has the ability to do it because meat is high in saturated fats sometimes, depending on what you're eating, and they also can be high in sodium, and sodium is something that is going to increase your cholesterol levels. But for the most part, these unclean meats, which we really shouldn't eat at all, but over time humans have just started eating anything, these are the foods that are really going to spike up your cholesterol levels. Bottom feeders. Okay, bottom feeders. You guys want to hear how I feel about bottom feeders? Oh no, it's not even. The sound effect's not on here. It's a wah 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 wah. Okay, I just did it myself. That's how I feel about bottom feeders. Only in the aspect of food. Okay, now bottom feeders just being on the earth. Hand clap. We love bottom feeders. Bottom feeders are literally meant to help us keep the earth clean, right? They weren't designed for us to eat. So things like shrimp, lobster, and crab, for example, right? If you go down to the south, you look at gumbo. I know a lot of people love ceviche. All those foods, they are high in activated my fave. Thank you for joining. All these foods, they are high in cholesterol. And we have to understand why. They are high in cholesterol because, for one, they don't have a lot of protein. For two, their bodies are built to basically eat anything that drops to the bottom of the ocean. Okay, meaning they're eating things that are dead. They're eating things that may be decomposing. They're eating diseases. They're eating unclean foods. They're eating a lot of things that we as humans should not be eating. So if you are struggling with weight or you're struggling with cholesterol, the first thing you're going to want to do is stop eating unclean meat. Of course, you're going to want to cut down your meat intake in general, but the first thing you're going to want to do is stop eating unclean meat. That is a very important step into cleaning up your diet and cleaning up your system, okay? Because a healthy gut is going to lead to just a healthy mind, body, and spirit going forward, all right? So shrimp, lobster, and crab, right? All these things are unclean to us because they are food. They are sea creatures that don't have fins and they don't have scales. So to throw another sea creature in there, catfish is another creature you don't want to eat. I caught a beautiful catfish when I was fishing, but I couldn't eat them because I understand what it does. It goes at the bottom of the ocean, and where I caught it at, I caught it in some murky water. Okay, it just goes to show you that these catfish, they are here to clean up the sea. They are not meant to be eaten, and these fish are high in salts, which is going to spike your cholesterol, and they are also high in things that you don't need to be intaking. Some of these things eat the other animals' poop because they're trying to keep the ocean clean. And we all know that you are what you eat. So anyone in their right mind does not want to be eating poop. You wouldn't go to the toilet and be like, "Ooh, I'm gonna eat a piece of dookie today." Right? So you gotta understand that when you're eating shrimp, lobster, and crab and catfish, these animals are eating dookie. A bison is not going to eat no dookie. Okay? A cow's not going to go eat no boo-boo. It's not going to do that. So it's very important you understand what you're eating because ultimately you are what you eat. If you're eating shrimp and it eats boo-boo, if you just do the math, you're going to feel like boo-boo. If you just do the math. boo boo plus boo boo equals boo boo. There's no way that boo boo plus boo boo equals good health. All right. That's just not logical. Right. So let's get to the next land animal that is one of the highest causing animals in high cholesterol, and that is pork. All right. Now, don't get me wrong, I used to eat these things until I've furthered my understanding and my knowledge. Now I don't eat these things knowingly. Okay. And when I say by knowingly, I'll give you an example. And I'm going to make a whole entire episode on this, so I'm not going to harp on this right now. But what you should know is that if you're eating things like gummy bears, marshmallows, anything that includes gelatin, those gelatins are pork-based products. Like I said, I'm not going to harp on this because I have an entire email from a company who makes these products, and they told me the ingredients of their gelatin, and it's pork-based. It's porcine-based, which is pork. Okay. I didn't know that for a long time, so I was still eating pork not knowingly. But now that I know these things, I don't eat them anymore. Okay. Pork is a unclean food. For one, this animal has no pores to sweat. So everything, you got to understand what sweat does for the body. Sweat is a way that it releases chemicals that don't need to be there, for one, and it cools us down. So for a pig, it keeps all of those chemicals inside of it. Okay. And that those chemicals are being put into the parts of the food of the pig that you're eating. We also must look at shrimp, lobster, crab, and pork and understand that, for one, most of these meats are highly processed. Okay. And since they are highly processed, we're going to dive a little bit into this when we get into the additives. Things that are highly processed usually have to be neutralized with salt. Okay. So shrimp, lobster, crab, and pork, when they go through this processing process, they have to be neutralized multiple times. And on top of that, all the chemicals that are being added to these foods, they have to be neutralized with a salt base. And salt is sodium, which heightens your cholesterol. Okay. So not only are you eating an animal that is already high in cholesterol, you are eating the processed chemicals on top of those meats, including red meat too. Even the processed red meats, right? Any processed meats that have hormones or chemicals added to them, they are being neutralized with salt. Okay, on top of the chemicals they have, right? So let's get into a couple drinks that'll raise your cholesterol. Let's start with Gatorade. Like I said, I'm gonna do podcasts on these where I just dive all the way into them, so I'm not gonna go super high into them. Gatorade, Kool-Aid, all these drinks that have food dyes in them, right? And preservatives. All these things are going to raise your cholesterol. And this goes back to my last point, because when you do your research like I have, right? And you're in the food industry, these companies are using these dyes, and these dyes have to be neutralized so that they're less toxic when you eat them. Okay. And the way that they neutralize them is with salt. So if you go look at BHT, if you go, it's a preservative. If you go look at yellow 5, red 40, yellow 1, blue 5, all of these ingredients have to be neutralized so that they do not just kill you right off the bat, because then you're basically just be ingesting poison. So they have to neutralize the acidity of the chemical, and they use salt to do it. So imagine, like I went over in the last podcast. If you go look at episode 4 of the last podcast talking about the Killer Captain Crunch Berries, the Killer Captain Crunch Berries. If you go look at that, the Captain Crunch Berries has blue, yellow, red, and green, right? All of those colors, each of those colors are different dyes, and they all have to be neutralized with salt. On top of that, if you're drinking that or eating that cereal with milk, dairy is also going to raise your cholesterol levels too. So you're just adding a pound of salt into your system at once, on top of adding the chemicals. And now people are wondering, dang, why is my cholesterol so high? Why do I have heart disease? And why do I have cancer? Easy answer. You're literally adding salt, chemicals, poison, and cancerous objects into your body, and you're expecting to not live past 65. It's not logical. Okay. Now, I heard salt and sodium is different. I'll do some research for you, but if I'm not mistaken, sodium is a processed version of salt, but I will do some more research on you for that. For those who are listening to this conversation, if you're not on my live Instagram and you're just on listening to the podcast, we have a commenter who said that they heard that salt and sodium is different. So that's why I just responded. Thank you for your response. Much love and peace. Now, let's get into one of the biggest killers of, I want to say, brown people, because a lot of brown people use heavy seasoning. I will say who we know as white people, they don't use as much seasoning. They will more so use more vegetables, right? Which is a way that I have actually taken into my lifestyle. And it's funny at first, when you grow up, they make fun of like, oh, you don't season your food. But then when you really learn about these seasoning, you see why it's important we learn how to season. I'm not saying don't season your food. You don't have to not season it. You just need to know how to season it, right? So one of the biggest killer seasonings, and you might know of this, you guys can type some in the comments if you want. If you've ever heard of Lowry's seasoning salt, if you're brown, you probably won't you won't find Lowry's in my house, I'll tell you that for sure. But if you go into any brown person's kitchen, you gonna see some Lowry seasoning salt, bruh. We put Lowry's on anything: French fries, fish, meat, tacos. I don't care what it is, Lowry's is getting put on there, okay? But it's very important that you read the ingredients of Lowry's. I'm not going to do it in this one because, like I said, this is just a quick overview. I will actually go through and break down all of these on their own original episodes. Lowry's has so much preservatives in it and additives that not only does it already have salt in it because it's a seasoning salt, you have extra salt and sodium on top of the ingredients because they have to use it to neutralize the preservative. It is crazy. So you're asking me, well, dang, I can't use any seasoning? No, I'm not saying you can't use any seasoning. What I'm saying is you need to stay away from the seasoning that is not organic or that is using additives, because these things are being neutralized with salt. So I'll give you an example. I made my own onion powder for the first time. It was amazing. I grew white onions. They were huge and beautiful. And I took some of them and I cut them, the stems, the stalks, and the bulbs, and I dried them. Once they dried, I grinded them up. I made my own onion powder, and it was amazing. You can do that. Or you can simply go to the store and find yourself some organic seasoning. As we know, organic is just a label that the FDA makes, the industry go through a process to get that label. And sometimes the things aren't always organic. That's why I always say it's best to just do it yourself and get the knowledge and bring people together so we can do it ourselves. But at the very least, you can start off by getting some organic seasoning. Okay. Now, a lot of people are switching their diets to a more vegetable and fruit-based diet. That is awesome, right? That's a big start. Hand clap for you. You know what I mean? Hand clap for you. That is awesome, right? That's what you should do. But we have to be aware that if you aren't eating things that aren't organic, quote unquote, or to be more specific, if you are eating things that are being grown with pesticides, these pesticides are going to be put on your plants and you are going to ingest them. And what do these pesticides have in them? They have cancerous chemicals that are being neutralized with salt. Okay? So you can say like, oh man, I've been eating fruits and vegetables and I've been bringing down my cholesterol levels a little bit, but it's not where I want it to be. I'm going to ask you, do you know if your food grower is using pesticides? Because those pesticides have cancerous chemicals and salt bases. Okay? Now, this is why, if you listen to my second episode, I tell you this is why we need to grow food small scale, and this is why I grow food as much as I can. Okay? Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we bring this podcast to a close is medications. Medications are, if you ever this is hilarious. If you ever listen to those episodes or like those commercials and they go, this medication is not safe for you to take if you have high cholesterol, blood pressure, right? These medications are pharmaceuticals. I'm going to do a whole podcast on this, but to break down pharmaceuticals in a quick rundown, pharmaceuticals come from pharmaca, the Greek word pharmaca, which is pharma, root word pharma, which means a drug, a spell, or a poison. Okay? It is not healing. These things have not only chemicals in them, but they also have to be neutralized with salt. So let's give an example. A birth control pill. Birth control pill, if you do your research, have been connected to women having high spikes in cholesterol levels and leading to heart disease. And it's stopping their ovaries from producing. It's just a terrible combination. If you look at pills that people are given for depression, or if you're looking at pills that people are given for ADHD, not only are these chemicals that are being given to basically take down the hormones or the chemicals in your brain or in your body, but they're also neutralized with salt. Salt is what raises cholesterol. It's what clogs your arteries. So to summarize this up, the main things that are spiking your cholesterol levels is red meat, all processed meat, all heavily processed meat, shrimp, lobster, crab, and pork, which you honestly should not even put in your body at all, right? Foods that have additives, preservatives, and dyes. Foods that are inorganic, such as things with inorganic seasonings, and foods that have pesticides and medications. All those things are high in cholesterol, high in sodium, which is going to clog your arteries and cause your system to not work. So you shouldn't be drinking Gatorade or Kool-Aid just because it looks good and it tastes good. Make you some homemade lemonade. Make you some. Shout out to one of my closest people in my life. She made plum syrup from plums, water, and sugar. And you can mix that in some water with some lemonade, and now you got plum lemonade. You know, there's so much that you can do. You have to stop thinking short term. You have to think long term. Question in the chat. So salt makes pesticide poisons not poisonous. No, salt just neutralizes it so it's not too acidic. Okay? It just neutralizes it. So it to be specific, it makes it a little less poisonous. That's all it does. It doesn't make it not poisonous. It makes it a little less poisonous. Because if you don't neutralize it, it's bad. It's very bad. It's a bad chemical. And give us high cholesterol instead. Yes, it still gives you high cholesterol either way. Because for one, it's a cancerous chemical, and for two, salt has been added to it. So if you go look at like my third episode where I talked about Captain Crunch berries, there's 4 different types of additives in that cereal, and they all have to be neutralized with salt. So that's just spiking up salt levels, right? So thank you guys so much. We're going to go ahead and conclude this podcast. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to try to give you some information, some quick information about these things. All this information you can find out yourself. You can just simply start literally by going, and like I said in my first episode, it is important that you guys go to these stores when you're shopping and don't just grab and just throw it in the bag. Don't do that. Everybody do the throw it in the bag. Like, don't just throw it in the bag. Read the ingredients before you throw it in the bag. Hey, throw it in the bag. Read the ingredients before you throw it in the bag. I'm gonna make a remix. Hey, read the ingredients before you throw it in the bag, right? Read the ingredients before you throw it in that cart, before you throw it in your bag, whatever you're using, and get an understanding. The way that I got into this understanding and this lifestyle is that when I go shopping, I look at the bag, and if I don't know what something is, I'm researching it right then and there. I'm not, people are like, dang, you've been at the store for an hour. I'm like, bro, there's a reason. there's a good reason why my shopping trips are not the quickest. But hey, shout out to all the people on my Instagram live who checked this episode out. Thank you to all the people who are on this platform after it's been recorded, checking these episodes out. I really do appreciate you. I appreciate the love, and I'm going to keep trying to inspire you to keep finding healthy options. Peace and love.